Okay, so it's 5 p.m. and you know the tradition in the group is to start our AGMs on time, so we finish on time, so that we have a little moment afterwards to exchange, answer your questions, and make the most of this lovely place. So it's especially nice today because we haven't been together for a long time, of course. 2 years without AGM in person. Here we are again in physical AGM, a little bit different because it's both physical and digital. If you want to be really fashionable, you say, I was at a phygital AGM today. And so, greetings to those who are watching us live but remotely. So whether you're here or remotely, you'll be able to ask your questions at the end via the chat remotely. So it's a new thing for us. So we're one of the companies that can use the index to consult our shareholders from one share upwards, and that allows us to invite all of you to the AGM and therefore have this good attendance rate and the voting rate, but also a large number of private shareholders compared to the rest of our industry. So we're going to talk about the bureau now for this AGM. So I'll be chairing this meeting. We have appointed two scrutineers, two people who are physically here today and who hold the most voting rights. Françoise Janin, here she is, Françoise. Just a few words about her. One of the children, the daughter of Guy Vincent, the group's founder. Thank you for accepting to take up this role of scrutineer. And also Anthony Louis is here, and he's representing Crédit Mutuel Equity. He's the second biggest institutional investor of the group, previously called Lyonnaise de Banque, long history, more than 20 years investing with us. And he's accepted this mission of being the second scrutineer. And they agreed that Patricia should be the secretary for the AGM. She's the organizer of this event, as you know. And so she's also secretary today. So that's our bureau. Okay, there's a few mobile phones still on. That's good, it was mentioned, because everybody can now remember to turn those off. I hope I remember to turn mine off. So, in terms of votes, so for the moment we're above 69%. That's not so good, because last year we were 71%. We'll see if any latecomers can help us boost that number. But this doesn't stop us from holding the AGM, of course. In terms of number of voters, 1,077. And we need two more to beat last year. Of course, last year it was 100% digital. So, in event, quorum is there, no problem. So, we can deliberate as required by the law. So traditionally, we start with our employees, and you see that our teams are growing. 712 employees at the end of 2021, and that's 44 people more in Thermador groupe. We were very active in the labour market because, as you saw from the figures, we worked a lot, and it was increasingly difficult for our employees to satisfy the demand of our exceptional demand of our customers. So we've got 44 people more, but in fact there were 114 new hires. So you can imagine the work done by the subsidiaries to convince young people and more experienced people to join Thermador. But that's a good sign for us, because means we can attract people from the outside, when apparently recruitment is a difficult process. So once again, well done to all our employees, and we will continue to recruit in 2022, because we didn't manage to fill all the vacancies we had on account of our strong growth. So there are vacancies there. If you and nobody know people around you, do talk about it. We know that in the past employees have used their family relations and friends to recruit for us. So thank you for that. This year we're going to talk about societal and social responsibility. You read about CSR and sustainable development in the news, and we wanted to evolve, and you'll see that in page 21 of the universal document. We have chosen some specific indicators to help us progress over the next 10 years. Talking about things is easy, doing things is of course more difficult, and we have chosen 19 indicators. Mr. Ceres is here. That's going to get our figures up, our attendance figures up, which is a good news. It's great to see a founder of the group arriving. There's a seat here on the first row. But if you want to be more discreet, of course, you might find a place further back. Okay, we're above 70%. Challenge met. So societal and social responsibility, 19 objectives, indicators, and which enable to simplify this complex subject. You'll find these indicators in the universal registration document. These are sensitive but interesting topics, and it's a real challenge, because listed companies who fail on any of these major points do tend to get into trouble. The first of these indicators, we're going to look at social elements. So the first indicator is the Professional Equality Index. It's not a gender index, it's a Professional Equality Index. So our score is okay, average for the sector, which we can improve in the future. There's one in particular that we need to progress in, is the number of women amongst the 10 biggest earners in Thermador Group. Today, amongst the 10 biggest earners, there's only one, and that's very bad for this particular indicator. So in the years ahead, it's our job to welcome more women in this top 10, and we can do that because we've got women who are heading subsidiaries. We've got younger women joining us, and that means that we have the resources, we have the possibility to improve this indicator. So women in leadership positions. So in terms of the expectations of the public authorities and the average of French companies, 39% is a good score. And our objective is to get above 40%, and that should be fairly easy to achieve. Something that differentiates us is our desire to give this summary indicator which shows the length of service, which is a question of loyalty and therefore productivity and efficiency in the company. So average is almost 10 years. It's very high, we know that, and we want to stay at that level, approximately that level, and that in spite of the arrival of new generations who are more mobile and we want to keep above 8 years in terms of average length of service. And we're working on, of course, conditions at work as part of that. The percentage of employees trained, this has to increase in the years ahead, and we can do that because we have external training, of course, from outside service providers, but we also have internal training, and we need to progress strongly on that topic. And the last point is absenteeism. Absenteeism, that's very important in France. It's very low for us, and we want to maintain at that level under 4%. So, governance. I think I've got my notes mixed up. It was probably me. So, the attendance rate at the board of directors, it's 100%. So, as you know, that's made easier because we can use video conference, of course, today. So board members, even if they are ill or a little poorly, can attend those meetings. We aim to keep a high level. Of course, 100% is not possible because things happen, but above 90% is an objective. So, Agm Attendance Race, that's one of our objectives, and maybe we're a bit obsessed about it, but we think it's very important because it consolidates the democratic functioning of our business. So whether that's remotely or in presence, it's confirmation of our decisions. Employee shareholding is important to us too. If you followed what we were saying last year, this has changed. We've decided to take out of that figure all former executives because Jean-François Bonnefond retired, and that created a sort of imbalance. So we worked on the indicator to count only current employees. And in the universal registration document, there's a line that's been added to clarify those things, and you see that those 4 executives who are Hervé Leguiem, and you'll be able to talk to him afterwards. Maëlyn Boyer, represented by her son, he's over there. Emmanuel Desicures and Jean-François Bonnefond, and he wasn't able to come because his wife has got COVID. So those people have left the group and therefore have been taken out of the statistics in terms of employee shareholding. So that's gone down. That can be easily interpreted because the share price went up and some people may have decided to sell. Some employees may have decided to sell. So maybe we need to launch new operations this year to encourage employee shareholding. The mutual fund, the FCPE, still offers a substantial top-up, €2,400 top-up from the company if they invest €1,500. Which is of course reserved to employees. The percentage of employees trained in anti-corruption, very high, 98.9, and we want to stay at these high levels over the next 3 years to avoid any problems of that sort. And we want to protect ourselves as best as possible against that. So this is probably the most important issue, the resection of CO2 emissions. This includes direct emissions. The first is emissions from our vehicle fleets, and we want to reduce the impact of this fleet by the change of vehicles. So over the next 5 years We're going to be very cautious, but in the next in a 10-year horizon, we want to go to electric vehicles. Second direct impact is the heating and cooling of buildings. That concerns gas, heating fuel, and cooling fluids. And we're going to invest for this indicator number 11 to make our buildings more efficient and reduce consumption. This investment will start this year because we're going to move Thermador groupe into an older building which will be renovated with Thermador groupe of course equipment to improve its efficiency. So this is scope 2 for the specialists among you. These are indirect emissions. That's to reduce energy consumption with better insulation, optimization of design on lighting, heating and air conditioning. This is in progress, and these are things we'll be working on over the next 5 to 10 years. I'll remind you that we have quite a lot of actual real estate. So scope 3, yes. This is the most complicated issue, and we haven't given a figure for this. This is the impact of our products and activities. So we wanted to take all our products from extraction of materials until recycling at the end of the product life cycle. So we can't be 100% responsible, of course, because they're the manufacturers, the extractors, the recyclers, the transporters. But we need to make an assessment. And as you see on the table, we haven't made an objective because we want to better understand how we're going to meet this, reduce the impact with our suppliers. And it's obviously not an easy subject. In spite of all the time we spent and with the time we invested, we can only say that our figures are subject to a 30% error, margin of error. And that's normal. The experts tell us that's normal. And we need to be able to say, in the next 10 years, we're going to reduce our impact by X%. We'll be working with our suppliers. Khalifi is here with us. Marco Khalifi is the chairman and owner of our biggest supplier. So the next time we visit Khalifi, we're going to be talking about that and how we can reduce the impact of our products. So we can do it very quickly in our group. That's in after-sales service and all the means that we can implement to extend product life cycle. Products will last longer and therefore the CO2 impact will be reduced. And then indicators is kilos of waste per tons of products received. We're scoring well here. We're expecting further reductions in the years ahead, working on packaging and product packaging, and then waste recovery. It's a good level in Thermador groupe, and we're intending to improve that still further in the years ahead. Now there's the society angle. We're going to obviously be strengthening our relationship with our suppliers, and we want to have a more systematic scoring. We're working on a scale that will be the same for all subsidiaries, and we'll be using this scoring system with all our suppliers. And we hope to increase the number of suppliers who are scored by that system. We're also working on the number of suppliers who are ISO 9001 or 14001 certified. And we're going to ask our subsidiaries, in order, by way of an example, to become 9001 and 40001 certified too. Finally, we've created a charter, good conduct charter for purchasing, and we want 80% of our suppliers to sign up to this charter. And not only that they sign up, but that they engage with the process. So that's our CSR chapter, and these are subjects, if they're of importance to you, we'll be answering your questions later on. So the activities of the group, I would invite you to look at our reference document, which is fairly detailed on these topics. On 1 year, I gave you more detail about our distribution channels of the different professions of the group. There's many different markets, subsidiaries. We work in France, we work internationally. And so this year, we decided to focus on the company that earns the least money in the group. It's still losing a bit of money. That's Agm, and I want to thank the employees who've been working hard over the last few years to increase the business there. Very interesting market of ventilation, and we're sure that we're right to create this company a few years ago. For those who like technical issues, amongst the products that are very much in demand on the on the market, further to the new regulation, we've got the dual flue ventilation system, and you'll see this in the video. And after the presentations, Mr. Gray in the first row here will be able to answer your questions after our meeting. So we're going to have a look at this video. Professional equipment for ventilation, aerolic heating, and air conditioning, in business since 2013. Our products are designed for their sturdy nature, their low environmental impact, their durability, control of air purity, temperature, and humidity inside your buildings. Our mission is to contribute to the well-being and health of users. As an exclusive distributor in France for our partner Roce. Agm is a subsidiary of Thermador groupe. Tertiary double flow systems, galvanized steel networks, large diameter destratifier, Prometo double flow CMV, 3,500 references in stock, 98% 24-hour, 72-hour service record, technical experts to accompany you through your projects, customer satisfaction, Agm ventilation. Specialized distribution of ventilation, aerolic heating and air conditioning products. Avel dual flow CMV ventilation, winter configuration, primary network, secondary network, capturing clean air from the outside, injecting it into the inside. Distributor of fresh air in living spaces. Extraction of used air from damp rooms. Evacuation of air outside, used air outside the house. The exchanger. Primary network. Fresh air input. Extraction of used air. Secondary network. Blowing of fresh air, extraction of used air. Thermal exchange. Fresh air input 0 degrees, extraction of used air 20 degrees. Blowing of fresh air 18 degrees, extraction of used air 2 degrees. Heat exchange only, airflows do not mix. Maintenance of filters, fresh air filter, extracted air filter. Easy operations. Low noise levels. An application to regulate pure air flow. Avel dual flue CMV ventilation, air quality, energy savings, thermal comfort. Axial ventilation. So that's homemade, 100% homemade, made by Opaline, our communications agency. And it was an opportunity for you to visit our virtual home, one of the innovations from 2021. And there, our customers or our customers' customers can visit the house and see our products. And in this example, the product's actually working. I think that's a good shop window. And those who are interested in the virtual home, when we have our cocktail afterwards, there is a separate room where you can actually experience the virtual home. There won't be as much champagne in that room, but you're welcome to welcome you there to explain how it works, and so you can visit the virtual house. So we're going to talk about figures, because we were talking previously about extra financial issues. I wanted to show you the progression of turnover over 2 years. So we'll forget 2020 because it's not a reference year, of course. We'll go back to the reference year of 2019, and we'll look on the professional channel what happened over those 2 years for the 4 quarters, and you'll see the progression for Thermador group over 2 years on the professional channels. Quite exceptional growth, with one anomaly in the second quarter, and I think that's due to our wholesaler customers who boosted their orders to protect themselves against price rises. So we have to be very cautious about our forecasts for the second quarter of this year, because we are faced with a very, very high mountain. But if we level those quarters out, we see that over 2 years we have exceptional growth, and due in particular to the energy renovation of buildings. This is an area we have many products available to the market, and we're very well positioned on those markets, like heat pumps, but also solid fuel boilers, accessories, but also equipment and accessories for heating from solar sources. So we can answer all your questions after the meeting. So it's good prospects for this year, and that's what we should retain from those 2 years. I mentioned Thermador because it's most spectacular, but also other companies of the group can benefit from this energy efficiency drive, Thermador and Vivitube, of course, with their radiating ceilings, Axelair with the dual flow CMV, and in time they will benefit from this new drive. So we look at the retail channel over the past 2 years has also returned extraordinary performances on a market that normally would just inch up a few percentage points each year. And our retail companies, Mecafer, Domac, Dipra, Roce, really made the most of this opportunity on this buoyant market. Okay, we have to be clear about something. We benefited from French people's temporary spike in interest in their houses and gardens. But of course in 2022 that's going to slow down because of spending power, which of course is not unlimited, and particularly today because we've got inflation on the horizon. And I think almost naturally there will be a slowdown on those retail markets, as Philippe Boy says often. What we've sold, but now we need to maintain our positions that we achieved during those buoyant months. So internationally, we're growing internationally. More and more customers, 3,700 customers. Even, of course, in the 2 years, in the last 2 years, it's been difficult to travel. We've got Lionel, who will be able to answer your questions later on. It's an ambition of the group. We're putting a lot of energy and a lot of means into growing internationally, and it's not going as quickly as we'd like it. But it's not Safeco's fault. That's the company, that's the subsidiary who's working internationally, because their work has been, overall has been great. But we continue to grow. We continue to visit many countries. That means, of course, our market shares are very low in those countries, so the prospects are huge. And we've, I would say, only 16.4% of our business is export. France continues to grow, so we're not going to neglect the French market. But we've got this great opportunity for the future to grow internationally. So these multi-talented teams internationally, they speak a lot of languages, but these are difficult roles to recruit to, because they tend to be people who are multinational. There are a few of those in the room here today, and they will also be happy to answer your questions if you have any questions about their life, international life at Safeco. So Patricia's going to speak figures. As I said before, she's secretary for the AGM. She's also deputy CEO of the group, responsible for finance, amongst other things, and she's secretary of the board of directors. Okay, well, we can disinfect the remote afterwards. So we've spoken earlier, so I'm going to present you some figures. Turnover was a record for 2021 because we got above 486 million euros. And of course, we talk about our teams in achieving that, but we can also thank all our employees in 2021 and the executive committee too, and that's brought a lot of support to this growth. So 23% increase in turnover. It's both in terms of volume but also in terms of price, because we have faced we've had frequent increases in prices over the year from our manufacturers, and we were able to pass them on to our customers. The average inflation passed on to our customers, average of 4.3% in 2021. Those two elements explain this increase in turnover. So if we look at the impact on our profit, so we have a net profit above 52 million in 2021. That's the result of a growing operating margin, 14.8% of our turnover, and that's a level that we previously achieved in 2014. Between 2015 and 2021, we acquired a number of companies through external growth, and of course that has a diluting effect on our profit. And in 2021, we go back to the levels of 2014 without those acquisitions. So our teams have had to face high levels of demand, and we've been able to maintain our headcount in logistics. I know there's a few people from the warehouses, some warehousemen in the room who are shareholders, and they will be able to bear witness to that, those difficulties we had. And if we take our net result, it's 10.7% of our turnover. We were helped by the tax authorities because the tax rate went down to 26.5%, so that helped us. But 10.7%, we didn't achieve that going back 10 years, so that's really good news. Now on to our working capital. Our auto financing capability was 12% of our turnover, and we had working capital requirement which was challenged this year because it grew a lot because we stored a lot of goods, more than 200 days of purchases. So that means our purchasing teams have worked very hard in terms of anticipation of increases in prices, but also the rarity of containers transport. And Yves, I'm looking at Yves, in his activity, of course, the activity was very high with the energy efficiency drive, and so high stocks there too. So we are, of course, in distribution, and we have to satisfy our customers and have good quality of service. And in order to do that, we need stock. 2021 was difficult, and so we anticipated, and the purchasing teams anticipated the future needs. So stock 171 million euros worth, cash position 27.4 million euros, net debt ratio which is very low, and no other loans were taken out in 2021. I remind you, they are often because of external growth acquisitions, and there were none of those in 2021. So equity, which is 260 million, so that means that we're in a solid financial situation, which allows us to finance our stock and to diversify. Guillaume is smiling at that, of course, because I tend to be more cash and protective of our cash, but they were good decisions in the past. One of our key indicators is we talked about the operating result, which was 14.8%. There's another indicator, which is the ROCE, the Roce. And that's an important figure for our investors, Mr. Rentrop amongst others. So mechanically it's above 25%, and that was improved by our result, but also by our management because we didn't take out any new loans, positive cash position, and so this Roce figure reflects that clearly. So back to Guillaume, who's going to talk to you about the capital structure of the group. Thank you, Patricia. Okay, so the group's capital is more than 40% held by private shareholders, 10% by employees, and the rest by institutional investors. What's different is that Jean-François Bonnefond, I'm sorry, I didn't put the slide up. Here we go. You had to guess that. So the difference between last year and this year was about 14% for employees, shareholders, and the difference now is that, of course, Jean-François Bonnefond has retired and Emmanuel Desicure as well. So that strengthened the private shareholders, but also the institutional investors, the size of those shares. But increasingly, there are more and more Anglo-Saxons, in particular English people, English investors who are interested in our company, which is a good thing. So there are 77% are shareholders. We've got active employees and retired employees. That gives us an overall vision of employee investment in the group. So you've got active employees and retired employees, and the two people who are responsible for the FCPE, the mutual fund, and so you'll be able to ask them questions if you wish to. The number of shareholders is increasing. That's good news. It's very good news. And that the number of private shareholders is increasing in France, and so it's normal that Thermador group should benefit from that. But we're in a very professional sort of market, so it's rather surprising that we should attract younger investors. We imagine them more interested in fintech, biotech businesses. Yet Thermador group is a distributor of heating accessories, so it's very good news that we are able to attract them. So this is the share price over a long period. So for young people, or less young people who wish to invest, it's important to have a longer term view. We've had two crises over the last 15 years, and this graph shows that we've been able to reduce the impact of those crises and have a positive progression. As you know, in Thermador group, we insist on never reducing the dividend. So those who bought their shares 20 years ago, and I saw some of those earlier on, and I said to them, you've made a very good investment, because they've in some cases reinvested their dividends in shares, and so they've made a profit of over 17% over the period, which is a good operation. So the volume of trading of shares compared to 2019, we're ignoring 2020 again, but 2021 was a very good year in terms of volumes, and it's a good signal for the company. You can buy, you can sell, and that rotation of capital is important to accompany us through our growth. So for prospects for 2022, at the beginning of the year, I said that we were optimistic, and we're more relatively optimistic because of what's happening in the world today, which was unexpected events that have been over the last months. So in terms of building, we're still positive and optimistic, because energy renovation in building is a major program in France, and it'll be here for a long time. Whether it's the favourite at the presidential election or his challengers, everybody sees that as an objective, because it's a societal and an energy challenge. So I think in terms of building, we've got good product range, and we can be relatively optimistic. So industry, the current crisis may have a bigger impact because it's becoming difficult to get certain products. Things are not too clear, even though all the supply chain, there's a likelihood that everybody's going to suffer from this geopolitical crisis. And our market shares are much lower in industry than they are in building, so that's a better thing for us. In the retail segment, as I said earlier, it's going to be a bit of a more challenging year in 2022. It can't go up indefinitely, and I think that 2022 will be a year of consolidation. And I'm thinking of Roce in particular, who's got some good positions with some big customers in 2021, and we'll be able to question Laure, representing Depot also, as its CEO. So it's a more challenging future. In terms of export, we're happy to be able to visit our customers, of course, but we've got some concerns with our customers in the east of Europe. Some of our customers who are both engaged indirectly engaged with Ukraine or Russia are going to see an impact. Just a word about this war, which is an abomination. We obviously can't ignore the human aspect. We sent out a press release to explain that the impact on the group is about €1 million of business, so it's a limited impact, but however, in the medium term, it will have an impact on many things, and in particular on the rarity of products, and of course inflation. We'll talk about that later. And inflation is definitely going up. So in terms of profitability, we're cautious. We know that we don't communicate on objectives for profitability or turnover, but we recognize that the very high levels of demand in 2021 gave us this exceptional levels of profitability, not on commercial margin, which fell by 0.2%, but we know that our employees worked very hard to generate that turnover, and that can't go on forever. So for those who forecast these kind of things, I wouldn't encourage speculation. So inflation, we're expecting, from my point of view, will be above the figures for 2021, and I think that we are going to have high levels of inflation, which could be passed on to the business in general, but too much inflation, of course, as you know, from a macroeconomic perspective, can create a depression. So, external growth, we are alert to onboard the companies acquired recently. We finished that onboarding period, and now once again we're observing possible candidates that are primarily from France. And we're also interested in those that may come from abroad. And of course, we will keep you informed of anything that changes in that area. So that's it for the prospects. And I'm going to pass over to our auditors, Philippe Morel and Serge Guillot, who are going to explain how these 2 years have gone for them as the company's auditors. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So with Philippe Morel, we're going to present our reports, the two reports on the annual accounts and on the consolidated accounts, and then the special report on the regulated conventions. So these reports have been sent to you. They're in the annual document, the URD, and I'm just going to emphasize the key points for the corporate accounts, which were drawn up according to French accounting principles and are certified. We recognize them as being regular and sincere and reflect the company, both in terms of profit loss statement and the assets at the end of the period. Because it's a holding company, we look at the valorization of the subsidiaries. So we value, we get a value of 143 million euros from the company. No particular remarks from us on that subject, on the in terms of how those figures were arrived at. And then in our work, we check the information communicated in the management report and in the URD, and we have no special comments there. In terms of the consolidated accounts, they are drawn up according to IFRS international standards, and they're also certified, and they reflect the company's business and assets. And you'll see that there's a minor observation linked to a change in technique in terms of accounting standards, which has no significant impact, of 170,000 euros. I've just mentioned it, but of course it's not significant, nothing alarming there, and it's quite as expected. In terms of the consolidated account, the points that attracted our attention, one was the value of the goodwill. When the company is bought and there's goodwill at the end of the period, the group assesses and confirms the value given to that goodwill. And the second subject, and that's one of the points discussed earlier, is stock, which represents 170 million euros on the balance sheet, and we ensure that these stocks are identified and quantified correctly in terms of their value. And finally, as for the corporate accounts, we ensure that these accounts, as prepared by the group, are explained in all the documents and presented in the financial reports in a suitable manner. And so the special report on page 58 of the document, 158 of the document, just to say there are no new conventions for this financial year. There are two conventions that continue. One is the invoicing on by Thermador groupe to some of its subsidiaries. That continues for an amount which is low compared to last year, and the commitment to remunerate its corporate officers in the case of retirement, and it's calculated in the same way as for an executive retiring according to the industry-wide convention. And these apply to the financial year 2021. Thank you for your attention.
Merci.
Thank you. I just remembered that I forgot to talk about ILO's performance. Every year we say the same thing. They're fantastic growth in this market. Congratulations to Jérôme and the employees. You can talk to him later during the cocktail to ask him about this fantastic career in our group. Our biggest shareholder is not here, even though we have somebody who's representing him here because of illness. But we have a video to show you, and he will we'll move on to your questions and then the resolution. So we're going to listen to Thorsten. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Thorsten Hans, and I represent Investment for Langfristen Investoren. For those who are not familiar with us, it is a German fund of around 250 family entrepreneurs with a very long-term investment horizon. Once again, it's a pleasure for me to congratulate you on an exceptional year. Each year, when I prepare for the AGM of Thermador Group, I open your annual report and I'm surprised. Once again, a year of growth, once again, an exceptional year. In spite of the health crisis, supply chain problems, geopolitical tensions, Thermador has shown great resilience and an agility and ability to innovate, which is quite exceptional. But it's no surprise, because it's the fruit of a long-term strategy. The future of the group has been built on highly solid foundations. It's a rare quality and it's a precious quality in a world that seems increasingly short-termist, where people increasingly seem to want to get rich very quickly and by signing up to the latest trend. The recent years have been great for group, and I think that the years ahead look very promising for the group. But even if one day, for one reason or another, growth dips for whatever reason, don't be worried, because I am totally confident in the fundamentals of the group, and that they will allow Thermador Group will be stronger, more resilient, and perform even better in the 5 to 10 years ahead. Congratulations to the management team and to each of those 712 employees of the group. Thank you for your attention and enjoy your evening. When the institutional investors say that we are long-term investors, I ask them to clarify, what does it mean for you? And some say 3 years, and I say, yeah, we're not on the same wavelength. But when Thorsten talks about 10 years, obviously that's what we're about. So, would anybody like to speak, ask a question? 3 years we've been waiting to meet. Yes, we have a question. Of course, yes. It's going to be tricky. I'm sure these are going to be tricky questions, but I'm not worried about it because Patricia's here for the figures, and in terms of the different businesses, all the subsidiary managers are here. Don't worry, I think there's nothing to hide. It's a great pleasure to be together again. You said it yourself, but it's a great pleasure. And at Pernod Ricard, a meeting I was at, it was said that we missed you all, and this is definitely the case. I'm going to go back to the year 2020 because a lot of things happened, and you took a good decision. At the time, it was who's going to reduce their dividend, or who's going to actually eliminate their dividend. It was the fashion, and you obviously were confronted with this question. The results from 2019 meant a dividend was possible, and it was clear that it wouldn't compromise the future of the company. So you did it. You distributed a dividend, and we congratulate you. And because a major company came under pressure to remove their dividends, and I wonder if that's the case here. And as you know, there's a high level of employee shareholding, and so that's a very good sign. So congratulations on that. It's very difficult to ask questions because, of course, during your presentation, you've explained to us that the situation presents quite a lot of uncertainty. The first is whether you're going to be able to continue the pricing power, i.e. pass on the increases in prices that you're going to face onto your customers. Until now, you've been able to do it. And I'm just wondering whether you can reassure us on that point. You said that we have difficulty attracting new talent, but my question is the more important question is how to keep that talent. So what about employee turnover? Can you tell us what the level of staff turnover is here in Thermador groupe? So passing on the prices, the secret of Thermador groupe is not our centralization. If we did that within the holding, it would be catastrophic. So that's why we give that responsibility to the subsidiaries. They do that work, which involves measuring increase in prices and passing them on as far as they can to the customers. Because, of course, the customers also have constraints that they have to face. So what we've done in the past, we continue to do in the future in the same way. And because the structure hasn't changed, there's no reason that practice should change. In terms of rotation, staff rotation, it's a fairly short-term version, I think, and we chose not to highlight that index. What we're more interested in is average length of service. So we want people to come to us, but we want them to stay with us a long time because that's more productive. I don't have any memories of explosion in staff rotations in the recent past. Maybe Patricia can help me. So 11% in 2020, 12.92 in 21, and 14.4 in 2019. So there's no reason to be alarmed about that, even though, of course, we are working on those topics, particularly in terms of quality of life at work. The fact that we have an environmental approach is really important for the younger generations. The fact that we have always had a social approach is also very important. In terms of the dividend, you know that we're a small company, so small company means small pressures. And I learned from Guy Vincent when we were in the financial crisis of 2008, and you remember his temperament, those who know or knew him. crisis or no crisis, we maintained the dividend. And honestly, I was surprised at that, but I learned from him. So no real pressure, even though I did have a couple of phone calls, yes, of course. Any more questions? I just remind you that dividend doesn't enrich the shareholders, and if you want me to talk to you about that during the drinks afterwards, I'm happy to demonstrate that to you. Any remote questions from our remote? So I'm going to turn to Arlette, the boss of Opaline, and she's representing the remote shareholders. So there were 55 people on the chat. There are 4 questions. The first, there are two questions about stock. In 2021, the level of stock fell. Question mark. Was the level of stock refurbished? No, that's not true. We increased our stock in 2021. And I'd never imagined we'd have such a high level of stock. With Patricia, we thought that the actions of the subsidiaries had been a little bit excessive in the number of purchases, but in the end they did the right thing. So I'd say that our stocks are good. And that was a question from Jean-Pierre Marc. Second question from Mr. Caron. Do you use lean manufacturing in your logistics chain, in your supply chain, to improve level of service? So we have a lean expert, who's the boss of Distillery Labo, who applies that to projects, and she gave us a quick training course on those processes. In terms of supply chain, we've been working for a couple of years now with a high level software which helps us to better buy and improve our stock rotation to satisfy our customers. So this software, we could, if we want to show off, we could say it's artificial intelligence, but I would say it's more sophisticated algorithms, and this allows us to help the purchasing department more and more. So that's how we improved stock rotation and service to customers. Another question from Jean-Pierre Marc. So the share price above 100 euros is a psychological barrier. Do you think, are you thinking of dividing the share, splitting the share? So we wondered, were we going to be above 100 euros for a long time? We don't think so. We didn't think so, and that's proved to be the case. So we thought, why should we take the decision now? We should wait until we'll wait for the share price to stabilize, and maybe we'll split afterwards. But we decided to wait. So Caroline, board member, and she represents the private shareholders. And when we have this type of subjects, we consult her, and she gives her opinion. And she did in that case. Last question. Pascal, from Pascal Mention. Are you thinking of regrouping Thermacom and PB Tube? Okay, so we're already doing that. We're bringing those two companies together. The two managers, Agm Mention. I suppose that this person who's also called Mention is part of the same family, so I'll let you settle that this weekend. And Florent Kiefer, who's the boss of Thermacom, is also here. And when we acquired Thermacom, and it was right during the first lockdown, I would remind you, and it was when we actually had our finger on the trigger. We were nervous, of course, but it's worked well. But it's worked well, particularly because they get on so well, the two managers. And I say, rather than saying we're going to merge all of it, straight away. It's not the objective. The objective is to establish synergies progressively with caution. We don't want to upset the customers, the employees, the suppliers. So it's real step by step. Looking at the market, developing new products, and I know that the next stage is to achieve synergies for logistics, and then there's an IT phase as well. And so step by step, we don't want to be in too much of a hurry. The two companies are developing nicely, so there's no hurry. Any more questions? Are we going to be able to move on to the quorum? Because we still don't know. We don't know where we are in terms of attendance. Okay, Patricia's happy. That's good. Ah, yes, okay, the slide has been updated. So, 74%, that's better. It may seem fairly incidental to you, but we fixed for long term 73%. That's one of the 19 objectives. That's an easy one to achieve. Others are more difficult. So we're there, 74%. Vote access, of course, helps. Everybody has to. If you want to type FRD2 in Google, you'll see the new European regulation, which is going to mean that institutional investors are going to have to vote, will be obliged to vote more or less in the future. So we'll see that figure increase. Maybe we'll get to 80%. But so number of voters has increased, but that's of course partly due to the digitalization of our process. So resolutions for 2022. So we've innovated slightly here in terms of the board and the employees present on the board. As you've understood, the employee who represented her peers on the board left the company. So we wondered whether from the candidates we chose 4 people. So 3 of them were volunteered to be representatives. And so when we looked at these 3 candidatures, we decided to propose 2 seats on the board instead of 1. And so that's why you're going to see that in the resolutions. We'll talk them later when we vote. We'll ask them to introduce themselves later on. So the new supervisory committee decided we're going to invite all employees who own shares, and we're going to ask them to vote on the resolutions. So the representatives today have the voting box in their hand, and they will be voting on behalf of the employees. And when we announce the results of the resolutions, I will give you the score of given by the employees who are shareholders. So the participation was a bit disappointing. It's only 50%, but we're going to be working on that. But it's interesting to interpret those figures and use them in our communications. So are we ready for the resolutions? A quick video to remind you how that works, and then we'll move to the resolutions. So, shareholders, the keypad that was given to you is personnel. The number of votes corresponds to the number of shares that you have or represent, and it appears on the screen. You will only have to use the green, yellow, and red keys. Green is for, yellow abstention, and red against. After each of the resolutions, we will immediately vote, and you will hear the vote is open. At that point, you will see a rectangle which shows the time passing and the time you have to vote. When that stops, and when that happens, the voting will be closed and you will hear the voting is closed. And the result will be shown on the screen a few instants later. Please turn off your mobile phones during the voting process and to return the voting units at the end of the meeting when you leave the room. So we removed the fact that if the notice that if you leave with the box, you'll be charged for it. So, well, that was just a matter of courtesy. We've not mentioned that, but also there is a GPS chip in there, and if you leave with it, we will find you. Okay, so we can now start on voting our resolutions. Okay, resolution number 1, approval of the annual accounts. I'm not going to read through the whole of the resolution, but you can find them in the URD in full. You can take that book with you when you leave, and if you already got one, or give it to somebody else who could be a new Thermador groupe shareholder. So, approval of the annual accounts. Voting is open. Voting is closed. 99.57%. That's as usual. The 300 employees who have voted, voted 96% in favour. Approval of resolution number 2, approval of the consolidated accounts. The vote is open. This feels a bit like science fiction, this, doesn't it? Voting is closed. 4. So resolution is adopted, 99.57%, and the employees 96.14%. Distribution of dividends. The vote is open. Voting is closed. Some came for the dividends, some came for the cocktail, but so the employees voted 88%. It's always a subject of discussion, of course, for employees, and we need to work on that gap between 88 and 99.9. That resolution adopted. Resolution number 4, renewal of my mandate for 4 years. Voting is open. Voting is closed. 88% in favour. Employees 94%. So thank you for your trust. So let's look at the 88%. Of course, as you know, before the AGM Friday, we had a good estimation of remote voting. So Patricia and I looked at those results because, as you know, or some of you don't know, we do have a complete file of which shows us who votes for what, who votes against, who votes for, and who abstains. So I contacted those who voted against, and mostly what we heard was problems of governance. Some people want the 2 roles of chairman and chief executive officer to be separated, which is less common in, of course, smaller companies like ours, but it's a concern for investors. Somebody wants a reference officer to be nominated, to be appointed within the board with a control mission, to be able to call a board meeting and maybe even do it in the absence of the chairman, so a counter power. So that was given as another reason for voting against. Those are the main themes for people challenging my continuation. We have to take it into consideration, and we'll see over the past year, over the next 4 years, how we develop that subject to prevent that result going below 50%, because of course that would remove the CEO. So for those who voted for, and I say to those people, I will do my best in the next 4 years to develop the group. Resolution number 5, nomination of Philippe Bory. So Philippe, maybe you can introduce yourself. So he's the boss of Mecafer and Domac. So Philippe Bory, I joined the group with Mecafer in July 2015. I'm very happy to have done that, of course, and I hope that everybody else is happy with that too. And I hope that you will improve our actions with this resolution. I'm intending to deploy all the energy I have and the passion I have to continue to develop Mecafer and Domac. So thank you for the trust I hope you're going to show me. So what we want to do is to include operational managers in our within our board, so that they understand how it works and they understand the governance aspects, and at the same time they're people who are actually working in the field, and they can bring in their knowledge of what's going on in the field. And Philippe is a great connoisseur of DIY, the DIY market. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Nice score, Philippe, well done. Employees were less unanimous, I don't know why, but they were at 85.5%. Something I forgot to mention, one investment fund who invests heavily with us has asked us to have 51% of independent people on the board. At the moment we have 50% independent board members, and they're not happy with that. They want a majority of independent shareholders. And as long as we are 50-50, they will systematically vote against those who are non-independent, so Philippe, Jérôme, but also the employees and myself. So, Jérôme, tell us who you are. Hello, Jérôme Cherbedi, boss of Faelo since the end of 2015. And activity began in 2016, a real adventure with a very passionate team, which allowed us to develop over the recent years. So I'm interested to see the results of this vote too. Thank you. Voting is open. Voting is closed. That's almost a landslide. I'm almost jealous. No, that would not be fair. So the employees were a bit more conservative. They voted in favour at 86%. Resolution number 77, nomination of Marianne Granger, employee. She works at Cyberco. She's going to introduce herself. Over to you, Marion. So I'm Marianne Granger. I'm marketing assistant at Cyberco, joined in 2018. So Cyberco, as a subsidiary, works on export for Thermador groupe. And I was elected in July 2022 as a representative of the employees on the mutual fund, the FCPE, and now as a representative of employees on the board. And I hope that I'll be able to join the board and bring the views of the employees to that institution. Thank you, Marion. So we're very happy that we'll probably be welcoming Marion onto the board. She's young, she's intelligent, the future is hers, the world is our oyster. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Well done. The employees voted in favour, 93.1%. Bertrand, over to you. So, I'm Bertrand Chevalier. I joined the group in September 2014, so eight years. I was appointed as a representative of employees at the FCPE, Supervisory Group, in January, like Marion. And in my subsidiary, I am CCSE representative for the management team. And we set up the first CSR group and I'm very proud to have done that. And so for resolution number 8, don't forget to press on the green button, and I'm highly committed to the group, and don't forget to press on the green button. You might have understood Bertrand is in sales. Voting is open. Voting is closed. So, 92.8% for the employees. I would remind you that the employee shareholder voting was completely anonymous. And it was not organised by us. So, more technical resolutions now. First of all, approval of our earnings for Tricia and myself. The variable part of our earnings has to be approved before by the AGM. So we're going to talk about 2021 that you can see in the URD in detail. So voting is open. Voting is closed. Okay, just to say that employees at 88.9%, so that means some employees find that they can't understand what our earnings work, and others feel that I receive too much income So now for Patricia, the voting is open. Same thing. Voting is closed. Well done. For Patricia. She gets a better score from employees than the employees at 89.5% compared to my 88.9%. So a couple of more legal resolutions. We have to do these. The first is to validate the earnings policy in general, and the one after is a resolution which states that Thermador groupe complies with the law in terms of earnings, and that we've announced all the earnings. It's very simple in Thermador groupe. Everything is very transparent. So the earnings of the board members, both independent and non-independent. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted, and employees voted in favour at 82.9%. So for the second technical resolution on the approval of the earnings structure, voting is open. This is for the corporate officers. Voting is closed. Employees voted in favour at 84.2%. So approval of our earnings for 2022, you'll see in the URD, there's a change, a substantial change, not in terms of the amounts, but in the way it's calculated. The board members have done a lot of work, and Laurence Pagani, who's head of the Committee on Earnings in particular, you can speak to her during the cocktail. We wanted to respond to investors who wanted to understand how the variable earnings part of our earnings was calculated. It's complicated, but it's detailed in the URD. So on this resolution, voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted, 99.69%. Employees voted in favour at 86.8%, and concerning Patricia for the same thing. Voting is open. Voting is closed. The resolution is adopted, 99.69%, and employees voted in favour at 87.2%. What we called directors' fees in the past. This is the payment of independent board members only. It's only those who come from the outside who receive these directors' fees. So all the board members who come from the outside are paid, and what we're asking you is to vote on an overall budget for the year for directors' fees. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Adopted at 99.97%. And the employees at 84.9% in favour. And I think employees still wonder what the board of directors is for. So we need to continue to inform, to train, and of course you can, if those employees who are here are free to ask me questions. Voting is open on resolution number 16, approval of the conventions, the regulated conventions. Voting is closed. So 99.99% in favour. .11% in the case of the in favour in the case of the employees. Resolution 17. We ask your authorization to intervene on the share market with a maximum share price at €140, something that we've not used in the past, but we would like to be able to do it if it seemed necessary or opportunistic. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Adopted 99.98%. Employees voted at 90.5%. Authorization given to the board to increase capital, not been used in the past, but we want to keep this valid if it became necessary or advantageous. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Adopted at 99.95%, 93.8% for employees. The last resolution, which is powers for legal formalities to the group's directors, the group's executives, sorry. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Adopted at 99.99% and 90.8% for the employees in favour of that resolution. So that's the end of our AGM. All the resolutions have been adopted. Some were challenged, 88% for example. So from tomorrow at the board meeting we'll be looking at these topics, see how we take into account these challenging votes. Of course, you're invited to have a drink with us in the room at the back and take the opportunity to talk with the employees, former employees, board members, other shareholders, suppliers. We do have some customers here physically. I would also like to thank Opaline, our communications agency, who looked after this AGM. So we've got representatives of Opaline here. There's Aurore, Adrien and Nicolas were here too on the technical support, sound and image, to ensure that everything went well. And then the technical films for the technical supplier, service provider who helped us with the voting process. And we'll see you all over a drink. Thank you.